Before we begin, there are some things I need to address first. First, I'd like to apologize about the delay of this entry. It wasn't my intention to make it take this long, but in addition to marathoning the entire franchise, which meant watching all episodes and movies, I had other priorities and other important projects I wanted them to be done for the time they're meant to be published. And as I said before, this series has no set schedule. It's secondary to everything else on schedule. Next, I want to talk about this illustration. If you recall from my previous video, I mentioned that this one belongs to Mito, a scrapped character from the final version. Turned out this one was indeed belonging to Simba as noted by Spyroid 101, so thank you for the note. Does this change anything? Not really. Simba was not white in the movie, he was not white in the old illustrations, and as far as the screenplay of the previous versions, no white lines were mentioned. Lastly, in regard to Matthew Broderick's claims that were sourced back to the book Disney, The Mouse Betrayed, in the last video I couldn't provide the full claim because I wasn't able to find a digital copy of the book and I had to purchase a physical copy instead. And now that I have the book, I can now provide the part for you to see. With that out of the way, let's get back to our intended program. I'm gonna assume you're all familiar with the story of The Lion King, so I'll try to make this as short as possible. The Lion King is the story of Simba, a young lion cub raised with the promise of ruling his kingdom. His jealous uncle Scar kills Simba's father and puts the blame on him, thus making him leave the kingdom after a failed assassination attempt. He meets new friends who raise him till adulthood. He reunites with his childhood friend who asks him to go back and claim his throne because his kingdom is a mess, but he declines because he loves his lazy lifestyle and is afraid of the reactions from the rest of the pride if they find out that he was responsible for his father's death. The ghost of his father shows up in the sky and verbally bitch slaps him to lion up and claims his right for the throne. He does so, throws his uncle off the cliff, the dry season ends in a cliched symbolism, circle of life restored, the end. The story of Jungle Emperor is nothing like this. The story of our white lion begins with his father Panja, aka Caesar, the white devil of the jungle, who protects his jungle against the humans. The hunters plot a plan to kill Panja by using his wife Eliza, aka Snowy, to set a trap, which succeeds. Panja was killed and his wife was sold and shipped to London Zoo. But little did they know, that lioness was pregnant, and on that ship, after 3 days of leaving Africa, she gave birth to a white lion cub. That cub would be the future king and emperor of Africa, Leo, aka Kimba the White Lion.
Kimba the White Lion is the one.
Using cartoon logic, Leo was self-aware and able to talk from birth, and his mother instructed him to leave her and go back to the jungles of Africa where he belongs. Oh, and did I mention he was less than a day old?
Now that you're 2 months old, you're no longer a baby, but old enough to understand.
And either due to fate or horrible coincidence, the ship was hit by a storm and sank, leaving Leo an orphan, stranded in the middle of the sea. Later, he was saved by another ship where he meets his first friend Jack the mouse. Unfortunately, since they caused a lot of trouble aboard, Leo was kicked off the ship with Jack accompanying him. And with the help of other animals, Leo and his friend managed to reach the great land of France. Yep. Instead of reaching Africa as planned, he took the wrong turn and reached France, where he got adopted by Kenichi, aka Roger Ranger. It's there where he was raised to love humans and their culture, but soon he slowly remembers his original mission and his desire to go back to Africa where he belongs after visiting the local zoo and witnessing how humans treat animals. And when the time arrived, an expedition to Africa was taking place, and that was the opportunity Leo needed, and from there, Kenichi, his uncle Mustachio, and several other people set forward to their journey while Leo is tagging along for his side of the mission. There, it's where Leo discovers the real face of Africa, the real law of the jungle, and faced with his buried instinct of a wild animal slowly emerging, he decided to take up the mantle of his father and rule over the jungle to protect the weak, but also to improve the jungle itself and bring together the animals and humans to be close friends instead of enemies, and to teach human civilization to his animal followers, thus creating his utopia of dreams. Of course, this isn't easy. An idealistic approach like this is not going to be reached and challenged. Animals who are used to live like animals wouldn't accept human ways of life either because it's too complex for them or for their pride as wild animals and hatred for humans. And of course, there are the humans. Humans are another constant obstacle Leo and the animals face against. From your standard game hunters, to poachers, to scientists who experiment on animals for their mad science tests, to tribesmen hunting the animals for food or religion reasons. But it's up to Leo, this naive city animal, who never knew his father and how he ruled the jungle before his time, to take on these challenges and overcome them using his wits and intelligence and the power of friendship to make the world a better place for everyone to live in. Now, I don't know about you, but these stories don't sound the same to me. Yes, both of them involves Africa. Both of them involves lions. Both of them involves dead parents. And both of them involves returning to claim the throne. But they were done under different contexts and circumstances. The crux of The Lion King is Simba preparing to take responsibility of ruling the Pride Lands. The movie ends with Simba becoming the new king. In Jungle Emperor, on the other hand, Leo's journey to return to Africa was only the first chapter. The entire series is set on him being the ruler and his struggles to bring order and peace, from dealing with other enemy animals to poachers and natural disasters affecting his land and followers. And that's one of the main big differences between the two franchises. One is about becoming a king, the other is about being a king. One had to grow up and leave his childhood behind and take responsibility, and the other was already taking responsibility the moment he was born. Well, to be exact, it was thrusted upon him against his will by his mother, but he knew it was his responsibility and came to accept it willingly. And that's an interesting difference here. We don't get to see Simba as a king. Even with the sequels we had, we don't see him doing anything kingly, mainly because he's not the main character. We don't see how he gains the animals' respect, so this scene from Simba's Pride feels kinda off. With Leo, on the other hand, we see the struggle he goes through as the fresh ruler. We see him gaining trust from his friends and enemies alike. All enemies of his father coming to challenge him for authority, and he either defeats them or gains their respect. We see him fighting his own battles, introducing new ideas and concepts to the jungle to make life easier for the animals, and making bridges between different species. So when he is in his weakest, we see everyone fighting on his behalf. That's the payoff for all his effort. Later on, the story would focus on two separate stories. One part is about Leo in his adult days, the other focuses on his son Rune. Depending on which version you're watching, the story of Rune is either learning how to rule the jungle like his father, or getting lost and move to the world of men where he becomes part of the circus, and the story repeats itself of trying to get back to his homeworld. In Simba's Pride, Kiara's story is basically Romeo and Juliet. Two families at war, but their children fall in love with each other and everybody gets along in the end. And we can safely assume Kiara and Kuvu are the new royalties taking over Simba's place. In The Lion Guard, we see Simba's other son Kion leading his team of the Lion Guards to protect the Circle of Life. One important element in the original manga that sadly gets glossed over in majority of the adaptations is the subplot of the Moonlight Stone. In the manga, this stone was found by one of the human antagonists, Hameg, who was also Panja's killer, which gave a bigger connection between him and Leo that is sadly underplayed by changing him to a mere poacher. He received the stones as a gift from the local tribe for killing Panja for them, but unfortunately for him, the stone was worthless at home and couldn't sell it anywhere. Until he met Dr. Plus and Dr. Minus, who explained to him that this rare stone, while useless as a jewel, is actually a great source of energy.
And perhaps you might recognize this too. It's called the Moonlight Stone. Scientists have found that the Moonlight Stones contain tremendous power and energy. So much so, in fact, that the scientists speculate, which means they guess, that all the wonderful changes that happened to the Earth those billions of years ago were caused by a few simple moonlight stones heating up and exploding. Well, Leo, that's the end of today's history lesson, and that's why I want you to take me to Mount Moon. Think of what those moonlight stones could mean for mankind, Leo.
The problem is, it's super rare and almost a legend. And with the help of Hameg, they could find more stones and of course, pay him a ridiculous amount of money. With the help of Mustachio financing of the trip that is now under the guise of academic research, Hameg, the scientists, Kenichi's class and Leo went together to Africa. On one hand, you have Hameg, the two doctors and a fourth member, Lamp, who work in getting the stones. You then have the class who went for academic reasons and are oblivious to the real plan. And lastly, you have Leo searching for his roots aided by Kenichi. And while the first expedition was a failure and resulted in several characters getting stranded in the jungle and others dead, Leo spent his time living and ruling the jungle until the second expedition that came years later. Unlike the first expedition, this time the scientists have several advantages. While they couldn't find the stones in the jungle rivers where the tribe found the stone they gave to Hameg, they concluded that they must have come from the Moon Mountain, a mysterious uncharted mountain that killed many explorers. But now they have some help, namely Leo, who not only is familiar with the jungle, but he also knows how to communicate with the humans, and they have an old friend of his to have his trust following their help in saving the animals from a deadly plague. And to reveal how it ended is revealing some heavy spoilers that I'm not telling at the moment. But the Moonlight Stone plot is one of the most important in the manga, as it what started and ended the story as a whole. But since the anime adaptations focus more on Leo's upbringing and changing the story to a coming-of-age one, they put that plot to the side in favor of other stories. The Moonlight Stone plot is adapted in the finale of Leo the Lion, along with episode 8 of the same series, and in the 1997 movie Jungle Emperor Leo, but neither of them were faithful adaptations to the events. The fake expedition, Hameg's Nazi connections were left out entirely, plus and minus were not important players, and the Leo series went with a different ending than what the manga and the 1997 movie went with. Regarding the themes, The Lion King's main theme is Circle of Life, how life is all within a balance where every creature plays a role in life and death. And while it does get a mention here and there, it's not what the story is about. It's about Simba becoming the king. The Circle of Life plays a bigger role in the Lion Guard since it's the main mission of Kion and his team in that series. Jungle Emperor's themes are mostly environmental based, protecting the environment, pollution, poaching, experimenting on animals, nature versus nurture. Another theme that is lost in animated adaptations is about change and how it doesn't work all the time. When Leo took over his duty as king, he planned to fix the jungle to be more civilized and make it more convenient to live in like the human world. Basically, he wanted to do what Babar the elephant wanted to do by turning the jungle to a world of anthropomorphized animals where every animal acts like humans and follow their customs. But as time went on, he realized that it's very difficult to do. Animals can't act like humans no matter how hard he teaches them. Animals are animals and humans are humans. Even he came to this conclusion after he was captured and told by his father in a dream to embrace his animal side if he wanted to survive in this cruel world. And that was symbolized by Leo getting rid of his pants that he wore for years and represented his attachment to the human world. And while he let go of changing the jungle to completely match the human world, his main goal about peace between all creatures remains the same. Still, that doesn't mean his efforts were for nothing. The diner, school, mail service, and farms still stand where they are and in service in helping the animals and making their lives easier. Over the years, there has been multiple adaptations of Jungle Emperor the manga, and here's a quick look at them all. The first animated series, Jungle Emperor, known in the West as Kimba the White Lion, is the first animated adaptation of the franchise. I've delved through the history of its creation in the previous part if you want to know the production issues it went with. This series is the most child-friendly of the bunch. It's an episodic series, meaning there's no continuity to worry about, but that doesn't mean it lacks one, as it has recurring characters who appear multiple times within the series, and some of them get developed as episodes goes on.
Something else you learned from the human beings, huh, Kimba? Well, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Thanks just the same.
Hey, look out!
Hands off! Did you hear me? I'll take care of the baby. Leave him alone. If you really want to help, go and save his parents.
Right!
Kimba, I was wrong about your new ideas. I take back what I said.
Good! Let's be friends!
And while each episode is a standalone, the exception for this are episodes 34 and 35. A two-parter where Boo Boo's lackeys join the good animals, only for it to be a trap and things goes back to normal the following episode. The writing quality was solid for the most part. While there were a handful of bad episodes in the middle, the last 10 or so episodes are where you can notice a decline of quality. Leo either gets too stupid compared to how he was for the entire series, or the stories themselves are idiotic and too cartoony. The original English dub is excellent. Yes, there are some line changes here or there to fit the American standards, and you can notice in the earlier episodes how poorly they tried to disguise deaths, which was resulted from Tezuka sneaking them around to try and pass the American censors, until they asked him to stop doing that or they won't approve further episodes.
I'll take a nice long rest here on the sand.
In the morning, I'll get to the jungle and bring you help.
You should try and get some sleep. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to rest with you here beside me, good friend.
Danger! Human beings.
Please, don't shoot!
Wait!
Stay back!
No! Kimba, they think they got me. I'll pretend I'm shot. Then you can escape. Goodbye.
Goodbye. I'll remember my promise.
But the voice acting itself is superb, and that's where it's best at. It got this vintage feel to it, and the performance gives life to these characters that you don't get from modern dubs where most of the time feels artificial or not matching the mood they're supposed to represent.
This is Kimba, the white lion. He would like all animals to live in peace. But there are those who do not want to be peaceful, like the Black Panther Cassius. Kimba does not want to fight, but Cassius does. In fact, Cassius is a big bully who threatens to hurt the smaller animals. This Kimba will not allow, for he is brave and will always defend his friends. Kimba has many friends, but this is not one of them. His name is Tom. His little friend's name is Tab. They're a pair of sassy, laughing hyenas.
You just watch. Our friend Cassius will massacre Kimba.
Yeah, massacre like pow.
There's just one thing I don't understand. What in tarnation's an amusement center?
It's a place we can build for all the animals to go on rides.
That's ridiculous.
What's ridiculous? Human beings do it. We can too.
But why?
So all the animals can have fun together, Daniel.
Kimba's right. It would be lots of fun for the slower animals to go fast. And some of the bigger animals that never get off the ground would know what it's like to fly like a big bird.
Hurry! Let's do it! We will, baby, but first we have to build the ride.
The 1966 movie is basically a bunch of episodes spliced together for a movie runtime. These episodes are Episode 1, 2, 4, and 21. The second animated series is New Jungle Emperor Move Ahead Leo, known in the West as Leo the Lion, and it's a sequel to the first series. Despite it being a sequel, it doesn't have much connection to the first part. Most of the old casts were reduced to minor appearances, and the bulk of the series is Leo journeying with his son Rune. The tone is less cartoony and darker than the first series, and features more deaths and violence due to Tezuka himself handling the production without American interference. But that doesn't mean it's more faithful to the manga. Just like the first series, this part is still using episodic format, and a lot of episodes based on the manga were changed to make them more family friendly and less tragic. The American dub is not that good. There's a huge quality gap between the Kimba dub and the Leo dub. The voice acting is horrible. Lots of characters had their voices filtered to sound higher in pitch, but they ended up sounding more robotic. You also have characters who sound so bored out of their lives, you can tell they were really phoning in their performance without any sort of direction.
You're not very nice, you know.
Neither are you! You big bully!
Oh, you bit me. Oh, you bit my toe. Oh, my poor toe, that's not fair. I didn't try and hurt you, you know, did I? I just wanted to ask you if you saw my friends the gorillas. I can't find my friends.
Even the white lion falls before us. Nothing can stop us.
Rookie! What do you have there, huh?
An old lycon, I think. He was trying to cross the desert and get into the jungle.
Is he all right?
No, silly. The poor thing is just exhausted.
But at least he's still alive.
Ha! I've suddenly got you figured out, Leo. Or should I say Agent X? You're not a real talking lion. You're a top secret robot with a radio transmitter in your mouth, aren't you?
Also, while this is present in the original Japanese version, but there's a lot of dead space where you hear nothing. No characters speaking, no music, no sound effects, just awkward dead silence.
Do something!
Yeah, there's a reason why no one remembers this series fondly. Jungle Emperor, or Jungle Emperor 89, or The New Adventures of Kimba the White Lion, is the first complete reboot of the franchise and the last animation Osamu Tezuka has worked on, as he sadly passed away after finishing the first 5 episodes. This series is vastly different from every other adaptation and comes across as the black sheep of the franchise. The first major difference here is the tone. This part is infamous for taking a grim and dark tone under the guise of being grounded to reality, with more emphasis on survival of the fittest aspect. There's a lot of death here. Not even children are safe. Because of this, it sparked a long debate among the fans if this was really Osamu Tezuka's vision, or if it's faithful to the roots of the manga, or just a dark adaptation for the sake of being dark and gritty and completely missing the point of being an optimistic story full of hope and ambition in a depressing world. The other major difference here is Leo's relationship with the humans. In all adaptations, Leo lived among the humans and loved their culture and sees them as potential friends, but still wary on the dangerous ones. The Leo here does not like humans. This is a completely white Leo who will protect his jungle against anyone and doesn't give a damn about humans. In fact, it took him a long time to accept that humans can be good and bad at the same time. And since he doesn't like humans, the main plot switched from bringing animals and humans together to simply ruling over Panja's jungle, a sanctuary for animals where fighting and hunting is forbidden. And there lays Leo's challenge: how to rule over a place where fighting is banned, a rule that is easily exploitable by anyone who doesn't care about peace, and no one can fight back against them because that would lead them to be forbidden from entering the jungle. Another thing emphasized here that was alluded to in the manga and the original series but never caught on is Leo's buried wild side, the constant urge to hunt and kill something that usually comes out when he is angry or frustrated, and he vents that by constantly scratching or biting inanimate objects around him. We weren't told or shown what he eats, but it's obviously not other animals within or outside the jungle. To make this short, this is not your idealistic Leo, and this is not your happy jungle anime. The series sadly never received a complete English dub, and only 13 random episodes out of 52 were dubbed, possibly due to the child-unfriendly content that made it difficult to dub without butchering the entire series for kids style. Jungle Emperor Leo, a 1997 movie that is primarily based on the manga. Yes, out of all adaptations so far, this is the closest to the manga, covering events from chapter 11 to 21, which covers Leo's adult life, including the birth of his children, Rooney's circus adventures, the plague, and the trip to Moon Mountain. And it's also one of the few times, if not the only one, that centers around the Moonlight Stones. But is it perfect? This is still a loose adaptation with many changes made to condense the plot. It skips Leo's child life and moves straight to him being an adult having his children. And here's the main problem. This movie doesn't explain much about the characters. It doesn't recap Leo's life, and doesn't introduce any of the characters to the audience. So the conclusion I came up with is this mainly for the manga fans. It gives an adaptation of the manga, and that's basically it. Some reception towards it even cements that theory, since many commenters hated how it ended or just shown plain confusion to what it was all about. There's also an interesting history regarding its premiere, but we will leave that for another time. Jungle Emperor Leo, Hon no Oji, roughly translates to Strange Instinct. This is one of animated short films made for viewing at Osamu Tezuka's Animation Theater in Kyoto that was released in the year 2000. It's 9 minutes long, and the plot is pretty basic for the franchise. An outsider animal enters the jungle, Boo Boo sets him out to have Leo leave the jungle, the truth is revealed, a quick battle, the end. It uses the same animation and character designs of the 1997 movie, so it makes this like an extra or a little prequel to the movie. It's also the last time we ever get to see Boo Boo in the franchise. Following this short, the franchise would lay dormant for years, until 2009 with the release of the movie Jungle Emperor: Courage Changes the Future, the most radically changed adaptation of the entire franchise. It's not even sure if it's to be called an adaptation, but more like an alternative take on the story. The story of this movie is set in the future in a time where man really did destroy nature, and the last thing that preserves it is an artificial jungle named Neo Jungle, where everything is bred and created artificially. Here, Leo is not an orphan. He is living with his parents. He is also a bit of a coward. Coco's now is a female bird instead of a parrot, and Toto is the main evil feline instead of Boo Boo. Needless to say, this is far removed from anything Jungle Emperor had done in the past, even more so than the 89 series. Lastly, I don't think this should count as an adaptation, but it's new animation. This is a music video by Leo Airi, released in 2014 under the title A Boy. It features new animation with Leo, the singer, portrayed as Leo, the lion. On the furry scale, how do you place it? Again, I don't think it should count here since it's just a music video with no story. Yet for now, at least, this is the most recent entry in the Jungle Emperor animation. And that's all I have to say about the story. Next time, we put the characters side by side and see how similar or different they are.